Sounds good. All right. Well, I would like to welcome everybody to our April 2023 Seiler Lunch and Learn, IGIC Lunch and Learn with Seiler Geospatial. Jay and Andrew are going to be talking about Field Map Designer and how you can incorporate that into your data collection. Just a reminder that we are recording this video, this Lunch and Learn, and we will make it available afterwards. It'll be posted on IGIC's YouTube page with links from our website. And so this would be a great opportunity for you guys after we send out notice to also go check out IGIC's new website. We've got embedded videos. And so at the bottom of the website, you'll see the most recently posted videos, and all of our past Lunch and Learns are available on that YouTube channel. So if you have any questions during this presentation, Jay, Andrew, how would you guys like that handled? Do you mind them kind of popping in to ask questions, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Just raise your hand or put it in the chat, or just go off mute and ask a question.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll monitor the chat while Andrew's doing some demonstration, but otherwise freely speak up. It'll help fill the hour.
Excellent. Yeah. So questions or other people's experiences towards the end, I think would be great. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay and Andrew.
Awesome. Thank you. So, yep, we're just going to do a quick presentation on Field Maps Designer, as well as some calculated expressions and a couple different functionalities you can use within the new Map Designer. So I'll have Jay introduce himself first.
Good afternoon. Most of you probably know me from IGIC in the past, or ITAG conferences. Been with Seiler for about 16 years. Senior GIS application specialist. I'm based out of our Milwaukee office. Originally, I was in our St. Louis office when I started with Seiler back in 2007. And just a side note, we will actually be putting on a workshop the first afternoon at ITAG, specifically on arcade expressions, which will take a deeper dive and actually do hands-on experience. And Andrew and I will both be there presenting that. So I wanted to put that out there in case you guys are going to ITAG in June. Go ahead, Andrew.
Awesome. Yep. So I'm Andrew Kline. I'm a GIS application specialist. So me and Jay both kind of do the same thing. We do training, support services, and GIS services for our clients. And I'm out of the Chicago office. So now we're just gonna, we usually incorporate this in most of our presentations. We're just gonna do a brief overview of what's new with both Field Maps, the mobile application, and the web application, the new designer, basically. So I'll hand it over to Jay for this.
Yeah, and these are easily found out on the What's New section. If anybody follows the blogs for any of the apps, it doesn't matter if it's Field Maps or V123 Quick Capture. We'll have some links at the very end in the resources page, but I'm not going to read through these line by line. But as you can see, if you've been using ArcGIS Field Maps in the last year and a half, they generally are doing quarterly updates. So there was an update last fall in November that went into adding some advanced configuration and newer configurations when dealing with the new map viewer for pop-ups. Indoor positioning, if any of you are aware of or get involved with the ArcGIS Indoors platform, because basically Field Maps will be your viewer once that whole system will be up and running. So say you're walking through a hospital or a university, or even just I don't know, you're going to a building to go meet someone, you're going to meet your financial officer, and you're not sure what floor they're on. Well, if they've instituted Arc Indoors into their facilities management for many reasons, institutions, of course, like Esri have actually got this all up and running in their campus so that you could find a specific person by using, your app, more or less. Snapping, of course, was included finally with high accuracy. If you were ever trying to snap a line between already two existing points that you had out there, that came into a much better realization compared to what it used to be when you couldn't use it with high accuracy. More recently, improved offline workflows, If anybody does use offline workflows, do let us know about that. The trials, tribulations, the good, the bad. I've heard both. Advanced or enhanced editing experience when doing form authoring. And something new, and I wasn't sure what it was, so I had to Google it. New support for anyone if they're using iOS smart card authentication. It's a little convoluted on how that all works, but basically it's like an extra security setup within your iOS devices if you're using 16.x or higher, and you want to incorporate that in with field maps. So that's kind of what was new in the last 6 months or so. Wow, yeah, since November, the beginning of winter. We're almost out of it, I think. As far as web application designer, got rebranded instead of builder or whatever it used to be called. Now it's more or less called the designer. There were some brief updates for ArcGIS Online in the left column, and then on the right column more so if you are using ArcGIS Enterprise. And those lists do get a little lengthy here, so I'm not going to read through them all, but of course, it's always the last bullet item or second to last bullet item. Fix various bugs and patches, whatever that means. So if you ever have any issues with any of the new updates, by all means, check out a good resource that I've noticed for ArcGIS Online and or Field Maps is they have a community that is available, forums, if you will. I'm not sure if anybody remembers the older ones that used to be out there back in the day for ArcMap or ArcPad. They basically have evolved those and call them Esri communities, and they basically are per individual apps. So if you're not already signed up for those, you can follow those too. Right, Andrew?
Yeah, awesome. So as you noticed too, the ArcGIS Online and the ArcGIS Enterprise are kind of two separate things. Just looking through the different updates, it seems like Esri is kind of pushing out the updates separately for ArcGIS Online and then ArcGIS Enterprise in regards to the web application, the Field Maps web application. And as Jay mentioned, in the past it was called, I believe, the Web App Builder, Field Maps Web App. They recently did a rebrand for that. So if you've been using it in the past prior to February, it was a different name, but now it's just Field Maps Web Designer or Designer, and it includes all the existing functionality that it had. They just made some updates to it as well and kind of did a rebranding on it. So I'll go into that a little bit. So the designer, kind of the main functionalities of it now, as I mentioned, they're making kind of quarterly updates to it. They've done a lot with it. Now it gives you the ability to create content, manage your layers. So within the web designer, you have the ability to actually access all of your current maps that are in your organization. And then you can also create new maps within this web application. You can manage your existing layers. You can create and edit domain values, change display names, configure layouts, hide and remove forms that you don't really need anymore, that you don't want to collect. And then really the big thing and one of the big advantages of using this web designer is you can apply arcade expressions. So, and I've found just throughout using this, it avoids republishing feature services or maps because you can make some pretty simple changes within here pretty efficiently. And one thing to note too is that you can arrange it and adjust it like I mentioned. So it'll basically be exactly what it's going to look like out in the field. So you can adjust the display names, anything like that, and kind of configure it for users out in the field. Do a slide just on the publishing content feature of this application. So as I mentioned, you can actually create web maps and feature layers from scratch within this Field Maps designer. What it does is it basically has kind of a wizard. You have the ability to, first off, name, create your point, line, polygon layers, and even tables. And once you actually publish it, it's going to create a web map along with the feature layer. So it's actually going to create both of those. Within this wizard as well, you can Z-enable the database with a quick toggle dial. You can also include, if you're using high accuracy, you can include GNSS metadata with just a click of a button. So it's really easy. Within ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap, you'd have to use a separate GP tool to do this prior to publishing. But with this functionality, you can just click a toggle dial and it'll automatically basically append or configure the GNSS metadata. And that's going to be for, now it's going to be for points, lines, and polygons. The polygon and line metadata is going to be a little bit different than the point metadata, but nonetheless, it will incorporate all of those different fields when you click on that toggle dial. And then all of the layers, so when you're creating a new map, as I mentioned, it will create a feature layer. When you go through this wizard, the layer will automatically have editing enabled as well. I think it pretty much enables everything by default, so even sync. And then you can add and configure attributes once you've created the new map. So one thing to keep in mind when you're actually creating a map and feature layer from scratch on ArcGIS Online, it will default to WGS 1984 Web Mercator Auxiliary Sphere. So if you're working in a state plane coordinate system, it may be best just to publish it from Pro in your state plane coordinate system, and then you can use all of the existing functionality within this web designer. It just, you wouldn't create one from scratch if you wanted it in state plane. So as I mentioned, once you've actually created the map, you can add a variety of different fields to your newly created map and feature layer. You can add barcode, date time, numeric, single line, as well as double fields. You can also create pick lists, so combo boxes, radio buttons, switches. There's a lot of different functionality. And when you add these fields, you have the ability to name them. And then once you save it, it's actually going to be saved back to the feature layer. So it's a pretty nice interface. It's pretty efficient, and it's really nice for just creating a quick map on the fly. So two of the kind of tips and tricks that come along with this, two things that I use particularly a lot is within this designer, you have the ability to pretty easily take a map offline. Like I mentioned, if you're creating it from scratch from the Field Maps designer, it's going to automatically enable it for sync. But if you have existing maps, say you have a map with multiple different feature layers contained, you're just applying multiple different feature layers within a map, and maybe some of them aren't enabled for sync, you can quickly go to this map and just enable all of them within here, and it makes it really easy to take everything offline. In addition to that, you can edit domain fields. So if you have existing domain fields, you can actually edit them. You can just remove them all and update them via CSV, or like I mentioned, you can actually create a pick list from scratch. So I'll go over that right now.
Wait, wait. Go back one slide. So
Yeah.
the import domains from CSV. If you have an existing feature layer that has like a domain, one attribute has a really long one, and you just want to wipe it out and replace it with something you create in Excel, you could do that here.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah, and that's probably what I use it for the most, honestly. If I've created a pick list in ArcGIS Pro or something, it'll have that pick list in here and I can edit it. And then also, if you're creating something from scratch, you can just quickly format a CSV file and then just upload it from your PC. So
All right.
I do have
That's
a portion on that I'll show you.
awesome. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. So first off, I'll go over just creating a quick demo, basically map and feature layer within this web map designer or web designer. So to actually, first off, to actually access it, easiest way is just to go up to the 9 dots in your organization, then go to Field Maps Designer, X out of that. So since I already have it open, as I mentioned, it'll have all the maps within your organization. So you'll have access to all of them that are published. If you want to create a new one, you can just go up to the right-hand corner and go to New Map. In this case, for today, I'll just make a point layer, call it a tree, and then just a simple point layer. You can add as many as you want, similar to ArcPro or ArcMaps. You can add however many you want, and like I mentioned, you can go to line and polygons. You can adjust that however you see fit. And then in the next screen, as I mentioned, you can actually enable high accuracy Data collection, all that's going to do is add those metadata fields for both if you have a line in there or polygon in there as well, it's going to add those. And then Z enable the database. So just a click, you can enable both of those. And then you can name the map. And like I mentioned, this is actually going to create a feature layer as well. And I'll route it to Lunch and Learn folder somewhere right there. So I'll route it to that folder. And then it's actually going to spin that up and create it. So excellent. So once that's created, it's going to have my tree point layer in here. There's going to be nothing in here, obviously, because nothing's configured yet. But I can go back and just double check. Here's my folder. Just refresh it. It has my tree feature layer in here and my tree map that I just created. Just to verify, you can always check to make sure everything's enabled for either offline use or you can add stuff to it. But like I mentioned, if you go into the settings, it's going to enable pretty much everything by default. So that's a nice feature. You don't have to go backtrack and enable editing. It's just automatically configured for you. And then for today, I'm just going to create a couple quick fields for later in the discussion. So I'm going to do a text field for a, refresh it. So I want to make it just a quick text field. And like I mentioned, you have the ability to just drag these in here. And this will be the database name within the feature layer. And all you got to do is click save, and that will be sent down and added to the feature layer as an attribute field. And I'll do in the demo for Arcade, I'm going to kind of add some arcade expressions and a variety of different fields. I'll show you how to do the CSV import as well. Get common name, save that. And you may notice if you begin to use this, it always wants you to save. So it's constantly asking you to save stuff.
And Andrew, real quick, I'll point out, yeah, it doesn't have the lovely little blue dot on the far left, what we're used to in the map viewer to do the save. So you do have to remember to go up to the top to the floppy disk up there. Otherwise, if you forget that, it doesn't save the changes automatically, which is a downfall at the moment.
Yeah,
Be mindful where the save buttons are.
One thing to note too, so if you actually want to create a pick list, so the pick list is going to be the combo box. So I should have created that as a, and I've noticed too, so basically if you create so this is going to create a pick list by default. And similar to Pro, when you're creating a domain, it's going to ask you what kind of, basically, if you want it to be a double or an integer or a string. So in this case, I'll just name it, just have it a string. And then this is where you can actually upload the CSV file. So I'll show you really quick. I have a CSV file that just contains, let's find it. So this just has a quick tree, basically 5 different kinds of trees. And all I got to do is navigate to that CSV file and then click on it and it automatically imports it. It's similar to Pro. If you can't have basically the same code for, they have to be unique. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If they aren't unique, it will kick you an error and you have to either remove it or reconfigure the CSV. But that's an easy way to add a pick list from scratch. And like I mentioned, if you have existing pick lists or existing domains, you can just go in here and edit them as you see fit. So I'll add 2 more fields.
Question real quick, Andrew. Mike asked, and it's a good question about that CSV. Does the CSV, do you mean have to have headers, or Is it
Oh,
required
that's
to
a
have
good,
headers, or if
yeah,
you
that
got
is a good
headers,
question.
what specifically, Micah?
I'll show you the CSV. So
Mostly, I
it's,
was just wondering, yeah, if the top row was the type, or no, it doesn't. Okay, so 'cause
yeah,
it didn't ask you if you had headers or anything like that, so I wondered how stripped down it was.
yeah, and that's a good question because I think I've messed around with that for a while, and I finally, it does actually tell you. I think if you go back to the pick list right here, it does give you the required CSV format. So if you ever have any questions about that, it'll give you the required info. But as you notice, the label is going to be on this side and the code's going to be on this side. I think I can't remember, in Pro, it might be the other way around. But just when you're creating the CSV file, just keep in mind the left row or the left column is going to be the label and the right column is going to be the actual code. So
It is the
two
opposite of
more.
Pro, but it's the same as when you do it in a feature layer. I think.
Yes, yep. Right. Okay. So I have that configured for what I'm going to do next with the arcade. But for right now, I'm going to move back to the PowerPoint. And one thing to show you too, so I did kind of pre-build a quick kind of feature layers, multiple different feature layers, say, so these 3 feature layers don't have sync enabled. And this could be, this could be a problem if you have a map with a bunch of different feature layers contained within your organization. It might be hard to kind of track those down and enable sync in all of them manually. So what you can do is if you just open up the map that's containing all of the feature layers, so in this case, it's going to be this map, then open it up in Designer, and then just go to offline. You can see that I have 3 layers that don't have sync enabled. And right now I won't be able to take the map offline. So all I got to do is just enable sync. Waiting on that last one. And then enable offline. And then if I go back to content right here, you can see this point feature layer. It was previously not enabled for sync. When I go back here, it's going to have sync enabled. So that's a nice tip as well, and that saves a lot of time. Instead of having to track down which feature layers are not enabled for sync, you can just go in there and check really quick. So, okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Arcade. So as I mentioned, within the Field Maps Designer, you have the ability to actually apply these arcade expressions via a calculated expression. What Arcade is it's just a portable, lightweight expression language used within the ArcGIS platform. You can do a wide range of functions with it. You can do mathematical calculations. You can manipulate text and evaluate logical expressions or statements. Arcade is actually used throughout the ArcGIS platform. You could use it in Pro, you can use it in Online, you can use it in Field Maps, dashboards, or in Synapse. It's a really nice tool. It really allows you to enable basically on-the-fly calculations, and it offers an increased level of customization. Out of the box, Esri does a lot of stuff, but in order to customize it, Arcade's going to be the way to go. That'll allow you to customize a workflow to your needs and basically automate fields that can be automated, and it's just a great tool to have. And many of the tasks that you can do with an Arcade are going to be can be executed in 1 to 2 lines. So it's not anything crazy. A lot of the resources you can find online will give you a nice start on a lot of different expressions you can use. So it's a great tool to have, and I would highly recommend even just Googling it or looking up different functions you can use. There's a lot of resources out there. So how to actually use the calculated expressions, I'll do a demo after this of how to do that. That's going to be applied within the web designer, the field maps designer. As I mentioned, you can automatically calculate and populate attributes. And what this does, I mean, it first off makes the life of everyone out in the field easier because repetitive tasks can be automatically calculated, and it reduces error. So it's going to be standardized. It's a read-only field that can be calculated. And all the different forms can be added within the designer. So it could be on multiple different attributes. You can really use it in a lot of different things. Calculate expressions can, like I mentioned, be used on attributes. You can calculate geometries, values from other layers or tables in the map, as well as account information. So you can get the user name, email, everything like that. And all these expressions are going to be added via the Field Maps web designer. In addition to that, you can also use Arcade to utilize conditional visibility. Within the designer as well, it actually gives you a pretty nice wizard you can use. So you don't actually need to use Arcade for most stuff. You can if you want. It will create most of the expressions for you right off the bat with the wizard, but it allows you to customize which forms appear based on conditional logic. Can be configured via, as I mentioned, Arcade or no code wizard. The wizard allows access to all the forms in the given layer. It supports single and multiple conditional statements, and conditional visibility basically streamlines data collection and removes clutter. So if you have a lot of different fields you need to collect and some of them aren't going to be used, you can easily cut those out with conditional visibility. As I mentioned, a couple examples of different things you can do with the calculated expressions. You can calculate the date, time, you can get the user names, emails, you can pre-build assessment IDs, you can populate a wide range of fields automatically. As far as geometry, and we use these a lot, I mean, we sell GPS gear, so the geometries tend to be really important to us, so we can get MSL, planar lengths and areas, geodetic lengths and areas. You can store geometries as an attribute. There's a wide range of different geometry tools you can use with Arcade. And it also offers a wide range of data management tools. You can calculate values from other fields, fetch related records, extract data from underlying layers. That would be intersecting underlying polygons. You can generate cost estimates and assessment reports. So there's a wide range of things you can do. I'll go over a brief demo and incorporate a couple Arcade fields. So basically, right off the bat, for tree number, an expression that I use kind of a lot when I'm first starting off or creating a database, the assessment ID is always something that is usually manually typed in. One thing you can do with Arcade is actually automatically populate you can create a prefix, and then you can automatically populate a number based off of the count of the feature layer. So I'll show you a quick expression. So in order to actually incorporate an expression on a given form, you're going to select the form. So the tree number is selected, go down to the bottom and go to calculated value. Then up at the top, you can name the value or name the expression. So this expression, as I mentioned, it's creating a prefix, which is going to be tree. And then this variable right here is going to do a count on the feature layer, and it's going to add 1. So it'll automatically create a unique assessment ID for me, for my tree. So if I run that, The first point I collect in this feature layer is going to automatically be calculated, and it's going to have an assessment ID of tree 1. The second tree I collect is going to have an assessment ID of tree 2, and so on and so forth. So it's just doing a count of how many records there are on the database and then adding one. So that's an easy way to automate assessment IDs, and you can obviously change the prefix to whatever you want. I want to do tree, can do whatever I want, name the prefix, and it's always going to work. It's just going to add, basically concatenate the prefix with the count of the feature layer. So that's a nice tool to have. In this pick list right here, so this is the actual pick list of the different tree species. And if you may notice, in the pick list, I actually have this is going to be the common name, and this is going to be the scientific name. So what I can do with the scientific name too is I can actually automatically populate that based off of my selection in the common name. So to do that, it's going to be super easy. All you got to do is return the value of the common name. So in this case, it's going to be common name run. And I'll actually add a point and kind of show you to the feature layer. Right now, there's no points in it, so it doesn't actually return anything. But this feature.common name is going to return the code based off of my trigger field, which is going to be the common name. So I'll quickly add a point into this feature layer. And a nice tip as well, so if you're doing some testing on a web map that you just created, you can actually just go to sharing and then scan that QR code, and it'll take you directly to the map within Field Maps. So that's a quick way to access it. If you want to test out some arcade expressions, I find myself using that constantly. Instead of having to search for it or navigate to it within the Field Maps app, it'll just open it up instantly. Does anyone have any questions on this so far?
Don't mistake our silence. This is good stuff.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat yet.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to quickly add a point so I can kind of show you how that's going to calculate.
We got some videos that we'll share too of some story maps that we've made.
Yep.
I'll share those in the chat in a little bit. So any questions before we move on? Did you have another example to show, Andrew, or do you want to switch back to the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'll show one more example. Like I said, I was just
Okay.
going to add a point.
Gotcha.
So I added a point for the black oak, and then in the common, in the scientific name, now when I test it, it should bring back the scientific name for it. So it brings back the scientific name, and it's going to be the same out in the field. It's going to automatically populate that. And then two other expressions that I use quite frequently. It's going to be the get the user. So in this case, whoever's logged in using Field Maps, if I type in this expression, it's going to automatically return their name. And then as well as the date, automatically populating the date of when the asset was collected. It's also a really useful arcade expression. That one's super simple, just date now. Run that, and that'll automatically populate the date for the user when it was collected. Now we can transition back to the PowerPoint. Those are the quick demos that I have. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of different functionalities you can do with Arcade, and this is just a kind of a simple overview. We are actually going to do a more in-depth kind of overview at the conference coming up. If you'd like to do that, please sign up. I will send it back.
Yeah, that'll be in the afternoon on Tuesday before the conference starts.
Yep. So done with the calculate expression. I'll send it back to Jay for geofencing. That's going to be a new feature that was incorporated with field maps as well.
Okay. Has anybody tested geofencing yet or tried it? Go ahead and just say yes or no in the, more so yes in the chat. If anybody has tried it? So it did come out about a year ago, and we got to see it more as a video format, which we do have loaded here on the second page here coming up, where Jeff Shaner actually did present on it at a recent conference and explained what its use case is for. What I have learned so far that it is only at the moment going to work with your location that your iPad or your iPhone, your Android phone, or your Android tablet has. It does not use a high accuracy GNSS from any of the manufacturers, so it is still kind of rudimentary, out of the box accuracy, but you get the idea, and you'll see it in the video where the cell phone accuracy is only a couple meters, not feet or centimeters. But the basis of this is to warn a user whether or not they are allowed or should not be going inside of an area, or vice versa. You could flip the coin on it and kind of use it as a container where I only want my field crew to collect data with inside of a particular box, aka the geofence. So you could think of it, A, I'm not supposed to enter, or B, I'm not supposed to leave with doing data collection, more or less.
Jay?
Yes, go ahead.
Is it only for like a kind of a toggle, a permissions, not permission? It doesn't do like, hey, if I'm in this area, I have these options and this kind of setup, and if I move over to this area, I get different options in my drop downs and stuff like that. Like, it's not that dynamic, is it?
No, not yet, but
Okay.
they're starting out simple, where it's more or less a warning, a visual warning, a geofence warning where, hey, you crossed over a certain threshold, or you're getting close to a threshold. It's like warning, danger, Will Robinson. You know what I mean? There's hazardous material ahead, or you'll see it in the video. It's a little too obvious in the video that it's for the users that don't look up when crossing the street with their cell phone in their hand. Ha ha ha. There's warning signs of visual warnings on the actual phone that you've crossed that line, or you could set what is, I wouldn't call it a buffer, but it's within a range. And that's why I said it's not that great right now when you're using the cell phone or the iPad accuracy, because there's a lag in warning you. But we'll show you here a little bit in the video that comes up. That kind of does more of the proof in the pudding. But basically, you do have to turn location alerts on in field maps. There's one gotcha on that. Remember to turn off location alerts before you exit field maps. Otherwise, your battery will get drained pretty darn quick on your phone or your tablet. I noticed this by witnessing it. I was like, wait a second, I had 80% battery. Why am I down a couple hours later all the way down to like 40%? It's because it was still on, and it was still trying to, it'd be like having Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on your phone, and you didn't realize you had it on. And why is my battery life, half of what it was 2 hours ago? So there's a little gotcha on that. So if you want to go to the next screen, Andrew, and we can actually just show the video. It's kind of a silent video, but there will be kind of a ping or an alert noise once the gentleman does get close. And as you can see, this was recorded in overseas. It's not English. Looks like German, but I'm not 100% sure. And as you can see, as the person does approach the red box, it's kind of telling them, hey, you might not want to go inside this area. And it is even fenced off, literally, besides the geofence. But as the gentleman does turn towards it, and there is an entranceway that somebody could get into, there are visual signs if he would look up. But if he's not looking up, then he does get a warning. And as you can see, he's already kind of crossed over it. And that's because unfortunately the inaccuracy of the GPS on a phone, and this actually is a proof positive why high accuracy GNSS is important for certain aspects. Because as we all know, cell phone accuracy can get us to the parcel, but it may not be able to get us to the water valve that's buried.
Yeah, exactly. And even like Jay mentioned, even if you're connected to your high accuracy GNSS receiver, it's still going to use your phone
Yeah.
within that. So that's one of the limitations of it. Obviously, it would be great to have that with high accuracy, but right now it's just going to use your phone. So like Jay mentioned, navigating
It's
back to stuff. Currently, it's just going to be using your phone's accuracy. So I wouldn't specifically base your having to navigate back to stuff off of geofencing, but who knows, maybe in the future that might be a functionality we can use.
Well, and just like anything, it's within its infancy. It's barely a year old, and then they gave it a little booster shot in the fall November release of Field Maps. Where we see this coming into play, not only for like hazardous areas, is we've got a lot of customers in northern Wisconsin and upper Michigan and northern, I call it regular Michigan, not the UP Michigan, that are in forestry. There we go. There's a story map that Andrew's going to show about using Arcade to identify what parcel you're on and fill that out automatically, or street. But going back to the geofence scenario is we've got a lot of timber companies and or counties that need to manage timber. And so they need to know what parcel they're on. And if they're not on the right parcel, they don't want to be cutting down or flagging down, Mr. Smith's property versus Mr. James' property trees. Does that make sense? So that's where we're kind of envisioning this to come for some of our forestry customers in northern Wisconsin, upper Michigan, and Michigan. But if and only if it can be advanced to use the high accuracy, because otherwise someone could accidentally go a couple meters over into Mr. Smith's property and start flagging trees that need to be cut down, and that would not be good.
No. And
No.
so this example right here, this can kind of be a workaround for this. So if you have really accurate parcel data, you can actually, say, as the example Jay had, if you're flagging trees, you can actually have that parcel data as an underlying polygon, and you can intersect that with, say you're collecting a tree and you need to write down the address. You can actually intersect that with the underlying parcel polygon, and automatically fill that field. So there, like I mentioned, there's a lot of different functionality you can use, but that is a cool feature if you have some pretty accurate parcel data that you're using, you can actually just intersect that and autofill, address values or owner values. So there's a lot of
Yep.
functionality
Less
with that.
typing, and then that way, especially with the high accuracy, this part does work with high accuracy.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
therefore, you could have autofill, because not all of us would spell out that address the right way, and you know what happens if you don't spell out that address the right way. There'll be some inaccuracies in the database when doing your queries. So this is kind of a cool tool to help out with that too. And I think, Andrew, you might have another video that shows a different way of doing Arcade and calculations on a project you specifically have been working on.
Yeah, so with Arcade, I think it might be this one actually. You can actually generate like costs. So as I mentioned, when using Arcade, those coded domain values are going to be really powerful. You can calculate values off of them. So this is kind of a project we've been working on where you can actually calculate estimates based off of in the field, based off of the pricing and the length of different basically different materials. So that can all be done within Arcade as well. Trying to see if we have a video of that. This one might be a better video. For example, if you wanted to drop a line, this is for actually a pavement application for a pavement estimate and repair. All the different value types are all coded in the domains. We're using Arcade to automatically calculate the cost of the repair based off of the length of the feature and then the cost of the material that's going to be used to repair it. So that's another way you can use Arcade to generate estimates right on the fly. So a lot of different things you can use with it. Like I mentioned, there's a ton of resources you can use. A lot of them are from Esri. You can simply just Google, Esri Arcade, and there's going to be a lot of resources that you can use. So, yeah.
I think if you scroll down in this one, is this the one where it shows some of the dashboard?
Yep, and all of the data that's going to be collected in the field is going to be routed back to a dashboard in real time, which adds up basically the estimate total and gives you kind of a functional view of all the different features that have been collected in the field and that have yet to be approved for basically repair. So, and this is kind of an end user platform where they can approve different repairs and then they can be within budget essentially. So, yep.
And Andrew
Cool.
actually gave this presentation about this project that we're doing for a customer at the Esri BP conference last March in Palm Springs. So we've caught Esri's attention on the specific workflow and the specific customer because it could compound to other customers because pavement's pavement. It doesn't matter if it's a gas station, if it's a school parking lot, or the work parking lot, or if it's a strip mall. These pavement companies are eager to use GNSS, even though they're not Esri users from the get-go, but we're helping them facilitate their needs to make their workflow easier.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, the high accuracy receiver is just another measuring tool. And in this case, the measurements can be displayed right within field maps. So a lot of different tools you can use. So we do have a resources page as well. Basically, there's a couple links here for Arcade, for geofencing if you're interested in that, and kind of the newest links for both field maps, kind of what's new. We went over it a little bit, but these different links will have more in-depth discussion about what's new with field maps as well as the other Arcade and geofencing. So does anyone have any questions?
Or particular, who is using Arcade and wants to maybe quick share what they're using it for? What's your use case? What's your need? I know it's lunchtime if you haven't eaten.
I'm sure a lot of people like me, this is Micah, using Arcade mostly for querying and labeling and not really haven't jumped into what I consider the cooler aspects of this.
And like I said too, if you are going to IATAG and have the availability and the time to join us in the afternoon, we'd like to fill up that afternoon workshop. It should be in the, I believe, but someone could correct me if I'm wrong on the board. When you do register, that should be available for the Tuesday afternoon workshop.
I will say one thing I noticed about the field map designer, this isn't the cool Arcade stuff, but I had a client that we added some fields, and so when they were editing, they were always showing up the bottom of their edit list because they were the most recent attributes. So things were a little out of order, and I noticed when I brought it into the field map designer, I can't even remember what I did. I basically took that and it created the list, and I could reorder them how I wanted them to enter it in field maps. So the amount of control was very nice to be able to control the order that they filled out the information.
Yeah, exactly. It offers a lot of customization and you can pretty much configure it exactly how you want it to be seen out in the field by the end users. So
I feel like my workflow for anything that's going to be used in field maps is to always open it in field maps and just take a look at every attribute and see if you can, or every layer, and make it a little better.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll make this available. Andrew can send you the PDF copy of this.
Yep. And if you have any questions in the meantime about anything we went over today, or any questions in general, here's our support info. It'll be included in the PowerPoint. We have a toll-free support line, and then also a email line you can reach out to us by.
Well, I really appreciate Dre and Andrew, you guys sharing this information with me, or with all of us. And so I will be sending out, when we get the video, we'll get it downloaded and put it on YouTube. And when I get the materials, I'll be sending this out to everybody on the IGIC email list. And in the chat, if you aren't a member of the list, go ahead and click on that and join. And if you have any questions, we'll have their contact information. So follow up. I am sure I have always had people saying, hey, can we? And now I know who to bug. So that's great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys are welcome. See you in less than 2 months.
Yeah, it's coming up fast.
Sounds good. Remember the theme. Come on. 80s arcade games, right?
Oh, yeah. Think of Centipede, Pac-Man.
I was just thinking of what to do. I was gonna do Cubert. I was gonna make a box, a cube, and then I was gonna find some sort of head that looked like Cubert. So don't steal that, anybody. That's mine. Just kidding. All right. Well, thank you guys for your time, and
Thank you.
we'll talk soon.
Yep. Everyone have a good rest of your day.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks.